The moment my ex-wife's mother whispered those 3 quiet words to me, everything inside me stopped. "Wanna look?" Most people would think I misheard her, or that she meant something harmless, but there was nothing harmless about the way she smirked through her window that morning. Nothing innocent about the way her eyes stayed locked on mine while she closed the blinds like she was daring me to imagine what I couldn't see. I stood there on my balcony gripping a cup of water so tight it almost cracked in my hand. My heart was pounding. My shoes were soaked from the water spilling out, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I had no idea what she meant or why she said it, but from that moment on, nothing about my quiet new life stayed quiet. My name is Derek. I'm 35. And 8 months ago, my marriage to Amy ended in a slow collapse of arguments, exhaustion, and silence that felt heavier than any fight we ever had. When the divorce papers were signed, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like I had finally stopped running. I moved into a small apartment in Riverside Commons, a place far from the noise of my old life. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a balcony where I told myself peace would eventually find me. What I didn't know, not until my second day there, was that peace wasn't the thing waiting next door. Lillian was, my ex-wife's mother. The first time I saw her standing on her doorstep holding her mail, she froze. I froze. The world froze. "Derek," she said quietly, "I didn't know you moved here." "I didn't know you lived here," I answered, trying to keep the shock out of my voice. She was in her early 50s, though she somehow looked younger. Brown hair streaked with silver, soft eyes that always seemed to understand more than you said out loud. She had been kind during my marriage, never took sides, never blamed. She just existed like calm water in the middle of our storms. "Well," she finally said with a small smile, "I guess we're neighbors now." Neighbors. That word felt too small for what would happen next. For weeks we hardly spoke. We passed each other near the mailboxes or in the parking lot, giving polite nods like strangers who only recognized each other by accident. I told myself I liked it that way. After all, she was a piece of my old life, and I had moved here to escape all of that. But I can't lie. Something about knowing she was next door felt strange and comforting at the same time. Her townhouse was always clean and bright. Flowers lined her windows. Her patio looked peaceful, with warm lights hanging above a love seat she kept perfectly arranged. My place looked like a man had unpacked half his life and didn't know what to do with the rest. Then came the Thursday morning when everything changed. I woke up early, restless from dreams filled with old arguments and quiet regrets. I stepped onto my balcony to water the dying herbs I bought last week. The sunrise painted the sky orange and soft pink. The world felt still. That's when I noticed her. Through her living room window, blinds tilted open just enough, I could see Lillian walking around her kitchen. She wore a cream-colored silk robe that caught the morning light. Her hair was loose and soft around her face. She moved slow, calm, humming a tune I didn't know. I should have looked away. I didn't. I don't know why I kept watching. Maybe it was because she looked peaceful in a way I couldn't remember feeling. Maybe it was the silence around her, the closeness, the softness of that morning. Maybe it was because I hadn't felt connected to anything real in months. But when she turned her head and saw me standing there, my heart slammed hard against my ribs. She didn't flinch. She didn't act embarrassed. She didn't even step away. Instead, she smirked, just a small one, and walked closer to the window. Her lips moved. I heard it, clear, calm, direct. "Wanna look?"
I froze.
She lifted her hand slowly and closed the blinds. When the slats slid shut, I swear it felt like the world tilted under my feet. For days, I avoided her. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know what that moment meant. Was she teasing? Annoyed? Testing me? Was it a joke? Or something else? Something I had no business thinking about? Every time I left my apartment for work, I checked the hallway to see if she was outside. Every time I got home, I worried she would be waiting to confront me. But she didn't. She acted like nothing happened. Polite hello, small smile. No mention of the morning that kept replaying in my mind. A week passed before we actually spoke again. I was taking out my trash when she stepped outside carrying gardening supplies. Dirt on her jeans, hair pulled up, and sunlight on her face. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" she called out with an easy smile. My throat tightened. I nodded but couldn't speak. She walked past me like the world hadn't shifted on its axis. But it had, because after that day, small things started changing. Her eyes lingered a little longer when we saw each other. Her smile softened around the edges. When she held the door open for me, her fingers brushed mine. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I didn't. Everything in me said to keep my distance. But I didn't. One Sunday afternoon, I was sitting in my living room surrounded by pieces of a bookshelf I'd been trying to assemble for hours. Wood panels everywhere. Screws rolling across the floor. My patience gone. A knock on my door made me groan. I opened it and found Lillian standing there. "I heard the banging," she said gently. "Thought you might need help." I didn't even have time to respond before she stepped inside and knelt beside the scattered pieces. "You're using the wrong screws," she said. I laughed. "I'm using the ones they gave me." She shook her head. "But not in the right places." She took the screwdriver from my hand. Our fingers brushed. I felt it like a spark up my arm. For a second, her eyes flicked up to mine, and something moved between us, something quiet and warm and dangerous. She finished the base of the bookshelf in minutes. When she handed me the screwdriver again, her hand lingered just a second too long, or maybe mine did. "It's nice to officially meet you as a neighbor," she said softly, "not just as Amy's mother." Something shifted in me, something I didn't know I was ready to feel again. 2 days later, she knocked on my door with homemade lasagna. A week after that, we started drinking tea together in the mornings on her patio. And not long after, things between us changed in ways I never expected, ways I wasn't sure I was allowed to want. But it all started with that moment, that smirk, that whisper, those 3 quiet words, "Want to look," and I still don't know if it was a warning or an invitation. After that strange morning on her patio, when the rain fell around us and our kiss felt like something neither of us planned but both of us needed, I thought things would finally become clear between Lillian and me. I thought we would wake up the next day with the same warmth, the same closeness, the same quiet understanding. But the next morning, everything felt different. I walked outside to grab my mail, ready to talk to her, ready to face whatever this new thing between us meant. She was already standing by her mailbox. The moment she saw me, her whole expression changed. She looked away fast, hiding something I couldn't read. "Morning," I said. "Morning, Derek." Her voice was polite, too polite. I stepped closer. "About last night," she cut me off almost instantly. "We should forget it happened." I felt the words hit my stomach like a punch. I blinked at her, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "Forget it?" She swallowed and nodded. "This is too complicated. People will talk, and you're my ex-son-in-law. I can't let myself get caught in something messy again." I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but a silver Mercedes rolled up beside us. The engine was so smooth it barely made a sound. A tall man stepped out, wearing an expensive suit and a smile that didn't feel friendly at all. Lillian's body went stiff. She whispered, "Graham." Just the way she said his name told me everything. This man had power over her. Or at least, he thought he did. He walked up to us slowly, eyes flicking from her to me like he was sizing me up. "You didn't tell me you had company," he said to her. "I don't," she replied quickly. "This is just my neighbor." He stretched out a hand to me. "Graham Mitchell. I'm a close friend of Lillian's." The way he said, "close friend," made it clear he wanted me to know he believed she belonged to him in some way. I shook his hand anyway. Derek. His grip was weak, insulting even. He turned back to her. "We should talk inside." Something inside me twisted tight as she followed him toward her door without looking back at me. It felt like someone had closed a door I didn't even know I was standing in front of. The next few days were torture. We didn't talk. She didn't stop by. She didn't water her plants when I was outside. She didn't smile in the morning. I would see her through her window sometimes, sitting alone on her couch, staring at nothing. Our eyes would meet for just a second before she looked away. She was pulling back, and I understood why. She was scared, but knowing the reason didn't make it hurt any less. One afternoon, Brandon from work came by with takeout. "You look awful," he said as he sat across from me. "Let me guess, woman problems." I told him everything, about the kiss, the rain, Graham showing up, the way Lillian pushed me away the next morning. He listened, nodded, then said, "Derek, man, you can't save someone who's still scared of getting hurt. You'll just end up hurt too. Maybe walking away would save me a lot of pain." But the truth is, I didn't want to walk away. Later that evening, I glanced outside and saw Lillian on her patio trying to move a heavy stone planter. It kept slipping from her hands. She looked frustrated, tired, and alone in a way that made something inside me ache. Without thinking, I stood up and walked out my door. She looked up when she heard my footsteps. For a moment, she looked like she might ask me to leave. Instead, she let out a long breath, as if she'd been holding it in for too long. "This planter is too heavy," she said softly. "I can't get it to the other side." "I'll help," I said. We lifted it together, our hands brushing. The air between us tightened like a pulled string. When we finally set it down, she turned off the hose and stood there quietly, water dripping down her wrist. Then she said the last thing I expected. I ended things with Graham. I stared at her. "You did?" She nodded, looking down at the wet concrete. "Yesterday, I told him to stop showing up. Stop calling. Stop trying to pretend he still has a place in my life. Are you okay?" She tried to smile, but it looked tired. "Not really, but I will be." I just couldn't keep letting fear make all my choices. I was so scared of people talking, so scared of being hurt again. I almost pushed away the first good thing that's happened to me in years. My heart thudded hard in my chest. She lifted her eyes to mine. They were shiny, full of something fragile and brave at the same time. "Derek," she whispered, "I've lost people before. I've had my heart broken in ways that change you. And I built walls so high I couldn't see anything outside them. But the problem with walls is they keep out the light too." I reached out and took her hand. "Then maybe," I said quietly, "it's time to open the windows." Her breath shook. Tears filled her eyes, but she wasn't crying from sadness. It was something else, something like relief. "You're too patient with me," she said. "Anyone else would have walked away. Maybe I finally found something worth being patient for." Those words broke something open in her. She stepped into my arms and held me tight. Her head rested on my shoulder. Soft, warm, real. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't pretending anymore. She let herself lean on me, even if just for a moment. "I'm tired of being afraid," she whispered. "I'm tired of caring what everyone thinks. I just want to be happy." "Then be happy," I said. "No one gets to tell you you're not allowed." She laughed a little through her tears, then pulled back and wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I probably look awful right now." "You look perfect," I said, and her cheeks flushed. That night, I sat on my balcony again, but the quiet felt different this time, lighter, hopeful. I glanced toward her patio. She was sitting there too, holding a cup of tea. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. She smiled a small, warm smile that made my heart beat faster. "Storm's over," I called to her. She nodded. "For now." I walked toward her. She made space for me on the love seat. Our hands touched again, and this time neither of us pulled away. Something new was beginning, and we both felt it. Spring came slowly to Riverside Commons, and everything around us felt like it was waking up at the same time we were. Trees grew new leaves. Flowers opened in the community garden. Warm air drifted through the complex, carrying the smell of fresh dirt and cut grass. And somewhere inside all of that, Lillian and I found a rhythm. We didn't define anything. We didn't rush. We didn't label what we were doing. We just showed up for each other in small, steady ways that felt like healing. Most mornings, she would already be outside on her patio with 2 mugs, one for her and one for me. We talked about little things. A book chapter she couldn't stop thinking about. A recipe she wanted to try. The strange birds that kept landing on her fence. I told her about the library project at work, how it kept getting delayed, how the city council drove me crazy with new requests. It wasn't dramatic love. It wasn't loud. It was slow, warm, steady. It was exactly what we both needed. One Saturday, she knelt in her small garden area pulling weeds. Her hair was tied back, her jeans were dirty at the knees, and she was humming the same soft tune I'd heard the first day I saw her through her window. I walked over to help without her asking. "You're here early," she said without looking up. "Couldn't sleep. Birds were too loud." She smiled. "That's what peace sounds like. Get used to it." We spent the morning working side by side, planting new herbs, fixing the small fence around her garden, talking about nothing special. But the whole time it felt like something new was growing between us two, something fragile and real. That afternoon, the Carmichaels in Building C hosted a retirement party for the whole complex. There were tables of food, speakers playing old songs, and neighbors dancing on the grass. Lillian and I went together, and even though I told myself I didn't care what people thought, I still felt eyes on us. She wore a yellow sundress that moved with the breeze. She looked soft and warm, like sunlight you could touch. People whispered, but she didn't hide. She walked beside me easily, shoulders relaxed, eyes bright. After a while, music drifted across the courtyard and couples started dancing. I stood off to the side watching them, unsure if I belonged in that crowd. Lillian walked up next to me. "What's wrong?" she asked. "I don't really dance," I said. She held out her hand. "You told me once that you didn't know how to love again either, but you learned one step at a time." Her smile was quiet and gentle. I took her hand. She led me onto the grass. We didn't do anything fancy. We just swayed back and forth to the music. Her head rested against my chest. My hands settled on her waist. For a while, everything else faded away. People were definitely staring. I could feel it. "I think half the complex is watching us," I whispered. "I know," she whispered back. "Let them stare. I'm done hiding from happiness." When the song ended, some people clapped. A few smiled. Others whispered behind their hands, trying to piece together who we were to each other. Mrs. Patterson from Building B grinned at us and gave a big thumbs up. Mr. Chun nodded at me with respect, like he already understood everything. Lillian looked up at me with a soft expression I wasn't sure I deserved. It was calm. It was warm. It was something like hope. A few days later, I found her on her patio writing in a small notebook. The sky was bright. The air smelled like spring. "What are you writing?" I asked as I sat beside her. She closed the notebook gently. "Just thoughts." "About what?" "About how love isn't supposed to feel like a lightning strike." She said, "Lightning is loud and bright and gone too fast. That's not what keeps people together." "So what does love feel like?" I asked. She looked out at her garden. "Rain," she said. "Quiet, steady, sometimes inconvenient, sometimes messy. But without it, nothing grows." Something about those words sank deep inside me, like they were meant for something bigger than that moment. Later that night, we sat together again, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. I caught her looking at me instead of the horizon. "What?" I asked, smiling. "You still look at me like you're surprised any of this is real," she said. "I am," I admitted, "but I don't want it to end." She laughed softly. "You're impossible." "Maybe," I said, "but you're still here." She moved closer and placed her hand on my chest, right over my heartbeat. "When you first moved in, I thought you were just trying to fix things inside yourself," she said. "But somewhere along the way, without trying, you started fixing things in me too." Her words made something in my chest tighten and lift at the same time. We stayed there until the stars appeared, one by one, until the air cooled, until neither of us wanted to go inside. The truth was simple. We were falling into something real, something neither of us expected, something neither of us wanted to run from anymore, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what tomorrow would bring. The night the stars came out over Riverside Commons, I thought the quiet between us was the best ending to a long story we never planned to start. But it wasn't an ending at all. It was only the beginning of everything that came after. Weeks passed and our lives slipped into a rhythm that felt more like home than any place I had lived in years. Morning tea on her patio, light conversations that slowly grew deeper, small touches that felt natural and warm, her hand brushing mine when she passed me a cup, my arm around her waist when we watched sunsets. Little things that meant everything. We didn't rush anything. We didn't need to. But one night changed the pace of everything. A quiet storm rolled in out of nowhere, soft rain tapping on our rooftops. Lillian and I sat on her patio wrapped in a warm blanket. The air smelled like wet leaves and fresh earth. Lights from the complex glowed in puddles forming on the sidewalks. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You know," she said softly, "I used to hate storms. What changed? You." She smiled gently. "You taught me storms end. They don't last forever." We stayed outside until the rain slowed to a mist, until her hair curled slightly from the damp air, until her hand found mine without hesitation. The next morning brought a different kind of storm. Graham came back. I saw his expensive silver car pull in from my balcony. Lillian was already outside checking her mailbox when he approached her, dressed in another perfect suit, wearing that same empty smile. "I told you to stop coming here," she said. He didn't listen. He never did. He touched her arm like he had a right to. She stepped back instantly, her face tightening back tub. I didn't even realize I was moving until I was already walking toward them. "Everything okay?" I asked Lillian. She looked at me with a steady breath. "Yes," she said. "It is now." Graham's eyes flashed with irritation. "This isn't your business." "It is," Lillian said before I could speak. "I don't want you here anymore, Graham. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever." He stared at her, then at me, and for the first time I saw it. The moment he realized he'd lost her. Not to time, not to distance, but to someone who cared about her the way he never did. He left without another word. And Lillian let out a breath she had been holding for years. Later that evening, I walked over to her patio again. She was sitting there with her hands in her lap, the soft glow of her outdoor lights making her look almost unreal. "I'm proud of you," I said. She shook her head lightly. "I'm tired, Derek. Tired of being scared to live my life. Tired of giving people power they don't deserve. Tired of letting the past decide everything for me." I sat beside her, then let the present decide. She looked at me for a long moment, a look full of history and hope and fear, and something deeper than all of that. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on me even when I tried to push you away." "Maybe," I said, "I finally found someone worth holding on to." Something broke loose in her then. Not pain, not sadness, but relief. The kind that comes when you stop fighting your own heart. She leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't careful like the first time. It wasn't hesitant like the second. It was warm and sure, like she finally understood she didn't need permission to be happy. After that night, everything moved forward naturally. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Spring became summer. Riverside Commons felt lighter, brighter. Neighbors waved at us instead of whispering. Some smiled knowingly. Some looked surprised but curious. Lillian didn't hide anymore. I didn't either. 7 months later, on a quiet Tuesday morning that looked just like the day we first spoke through our windows, I asked her to marry me. We were on her patio again, sipping tea, soft sunlight warming her hair. She looked peaceful, beautiful, more herself than I had ever seen. I reached for her hand. "Lillian," I said, my voice shaking more than I expected, "will you marry me?" She didn't hesitate. She didn't doubt. Tears filled her eyes as she said, "Yes. Of course, yes." We held each other as the sun rose behind the buildings, and for the first time in years, the world felt simple. 2 months later, we got married in the community garden, a small ceremony. Just close friends and a handful of neighbors who had become part of our story without meaning to. Mrs. Patterson cried, Mr. Chun gave me a strong handshake. The Carmichells brought champagne and toasted to quiet love, the best kind. Our life together started there, but it didn't stay there. 6 months after the wedding, we bought a small house on the other side of town, a real home, with a porch big enough for 2 rocking chairs, a garden that needed attention, and rooms waiting for memories. Now every morning begins the same way. Tea on the porch, her hand in mine. The world waking up slowly around us. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we sit in silence. Either way, it feels like everything I spent years searching for has finally found me. And sometimes, when the light hits her just right, she gives me that same quiet smirk she gave me the first morning through her window. The one that started everything. "Remember when you caught me staring at you?" I ask her. She laughs softly. "You were terrible at hiding it." "And you whispered?" She leans closer, her voice warm and teasing. "If you want to look, Derek, just ask." And this time I know exactly what she means. Because love didn't find us in a perfect moment. It found us in the middle of storms, heartbreak, fear, and silence. Not loud, not flashy, just quiet, steady, real. The kind of love you don't run from, the kind of love you stay for.